Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to the first in a two-part series of videos where I'm going to be teaching you how to play Streets, designed by Håkan Gårder and published by Sinister Fish Games, who sponsored this video. Streets is a 1 to 5 player tile laying game themed around building a city. Over the course of a game, players will add new buildings to the city, creating streets. When a street becomes enclosed, it is scored and players who own the buildings on the street will earn money. At the end of the game, the player with the most money is declared the winner. In this video, I'm going to be talking you through setting up the game, and then I'll cover the rules for the basic game. In my second video, I'll explain the rules for the solo game and also for the 2 expansions. This video has been created with the retail version of the game. If you have the deluxe version, your copy will have some different components. From the stack of building tiles, find the central station and place it in the middle of the playing area. Place one person of each colour on the tile laying down. Place the city park next to the central station like this, so that their roads form a corner. From the rest of the buildings, you need to take out certain ones based on the number of players in the game. If you're playing a 5-player game, use all of the tiles. When playing with fewer than 5 players, remove the tiles that show 5+ in the corner. For a 3-player game, remove one random building of each colour, except the wild ones. Put them back in the box without looking at them. For a 2-player game, remove 2 random buildings of each type, including the wild tiles. Then, shuffle the stack of buildings and place them face down nearby. Place the rest of the people and the money tokens in a supply to the side of the play area. The 2 storage boxes included in the game open up and can be used as trays for the meeples. Each player chooses a colour and takes the 5 ownership signs of that colour and a handy reference card. Each player then draws 3 buildings from the top of the stack and places them into their hand. Your hand of tiles should be kept secret from the other players, but note that the backs of the tiles indicate what type of building they are, and this information is visible to the other players. The player who has the most hipster cred is the start player and takes the first turn in the game. Beginning with the first player, players take turns with play proceeding clockwise around the table. Your turn consists of 3 steps which I'll summarise here and then go into more detail later in the video. Step 1 is adding a new building to the city, following certain placement rules. You then place people on the tile and finally claim ownership of it. Step 2 only happens if a street is now enclosed, as can be seen here. When this happens, the street is scored and the owners of the buildings earn money based on the valuation of the building and the number of people on the building. Then, the people on those buildings relocate to buildings on other streets. Finally, at the end of your turn, you draw a new tile from the top of the stack and add it to your hand. This continues until the stack is empty and all players have played all of their buildings from their hands. At this point, perform endgame scoring to work out who has won. The first thing you do on your turn is to choose a building from your hand and add it to the city. Each new building must be placed so that its road is connected to another road already in the city. For example, you can add the bicycle repair bar like this or like this. Placing the building like this is not allowed, because this creates a wide street. And you also cannot place the building here because its road does not connect to another road. And that's the same here too. However, later in the game, if this is what the city looks like, it is allowed to place the high-end tailor here. Even though it doesn't connect to the road here or here, it does connect to the road on the Chillax Spa, so it's allowed. Finally, a row of 1 or more buildings with roads that connect and run in the same direction is called a street, and the maximum length of a street is 5 buildings. After placing the building, for each symbol on the building, place a person lying down of the matching colour. On buildings with wild symbols, no people are placed. The last thing to do after placing a building is to put one of your ownership signs on it. This shows that it's your building. Each player only has 5 ownership signs, so when you place a new building, if you've run out of signs, you must abandon one of your existing buildings. I'll explain this later in the video. After placing the building, check to see if any of the streets have become enclosed, and if they have, they must now be scored. When a street has buildings at both ends that are oriented in a different direction to the street is enclosed, and at this point the street is scored and all players who own buildings on the street sell their buildings and earn money. Beginning with the current player and going clockwise, each player scores all of their buildings in the scoring street, in whatever order they choose. When scoring a building, you gain $1 per person on that building and an additional amount of money based on the valuation, which is depicted in the top right of the tile and summarised in the text below the name of the building. These are relatively simple, but if you need further clarification, they are all explained in the back of the rulebook. I'll cover 2 of the most common valuations now. Buildings with people icons in their valuation score for people of the appropriate colour in the street. Here, for example, the Indie Stage scores $2 for each yellow person in the street, so $6 in total. The yellow people on the enclosing buildings are not counted, only the ones in the street itself. Buildings with symbols in their valuation score for the symbols in the street, including any wild symbols, and also including any symbols on the enclosing buildings if they are pointing towards the street. Here, the bicycle repair bar scores $4, 2 for the green symbol here, and 2 for the wild symbol here. If the enclosing building also had a green symbol, that would have counted too because it's pointing at the street. There's a few additional rules about enclosing a street that I wanted to mention here. The 2 buildings that enclose the street are called enclosing buildings. And as mentioned just now, if they are oriented in such a way that the symbols on them point to the street being scored, those symbols will count when scoring the street. But it is allowed to place an enclosing building whose road doesn't connect to the street being enclosed, like this. In this case, the symbols would not count as part of the street. It's also possible that a building becomes enclosed immediately when placing it. For example, if you place the starter home here, it's scored immediately. Several streets can be enclosed at the same time, and when this happens, score the streets one at a time in an order chosen by the current player. As each building is scored, the owner takes back the ownership sign. It can be used on a later turn. When all of the buildings in the enclosed street have been scored, the current player must attempt to relocate the people in the street to other buildings. People will try to move onto buildings in a non-enclosed street that have a matching symbol. For example, here, the green parents move to the starter home, the blue shoppers move to the chillax spa, and the pink tourists move to the concept store. If there are no suitable buildings for them to move to, like the yellow hipsters here, they will remain where they are but are stood up. These people now have FOMO, the fear of missing out. And what this means is the next time a building of the matching colour is built, people with FOMO will immediately move to that building and then lie down, their fear subsiding. People cannot move to buildings on enclosed streets, nor can they move to buildings with wild symbols. And if there is a choice of which building they move to, the current player chooses. I mentioned earlier on that when you add a new building to the city, you must place one of your ownership signs on it. And if you run out of signs, you must abandon one of your own buildings before placing the new building. Choose a building you own and remove the ownership sign from it. Any people on the building must immediately be moved following the same rules for relocating people that I talked about in the previous chapter. And as usual, if there is no suitable building for the people to move to, they stay in place and are stood up with FOMO. But remember, you abandon the building before placing the new building, so it's possible for those people to get FOMO and then move to the new building as soon as it's placed. When the stack of building tiles is empty, players continue to take turns using the remaining tiles in their hand, but no longer draw new tiles from the stack. Once all players have no more buildings in their hand, the game ends. All of the buildings in the city with ownership signs are scored, but they only earn half of the money that they would normally score if scored during the game. Here, for example, this building would have scored $7 during the game, $4 for the valuation and $3 for the people, but in final scoring it only earns $4. During this final scoring, no people are moved or given FOMO, so the order in which you score the buildings doesn't matter. Just remember to move each ownership sign once a building is scored. The player with the most money at the end of the game is declared the winner. In case of a tie, the tied players must play again to determine who really wins. I hope you found this video useful in learning how to play Streets. For more information about the solo game and the 2 included expansions, please check out my other video which is listed in the video description. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment if you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions about the game, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you to Sinister Fish Games for helping to sponsor this video, and if you like the videos I create, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.